Welcome. This is Kellyanne Fitzpatrick from RedMonk. It is November 2020, and we have KubeCon CloudNativeCon North America 2020 just around the corner. With me today is Constance Caramanolis, who is a principal software engineer at Splunk and also one of the co-chairs of KubeCon CloudNativeCon. Today, we're here to talk about a little bit about the event itself, a lot about what it means to actually be a co-chair. And if we're lucky at all, we will talk a bit about the increasing importance of puppies in virtual tech events. So to start us off, Constance, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe your day job at Splunk?
Yeah. So my day job at Splunk is a little bit odd. It's not, I guess I'm going to say, traditional engineer, because I tend to float around between a lot of different roles in the sense of partnering with customers to make sure that their adoption of our products are working well, and also open source technologies like open telemetry. I'm still actually also giving sometimes people are asking me questions about Envoy, and I'm like, oh wow, feels a little bit weird to still be talking about this. So I do a bit of that. I also do contribute to open telemetry here and there. Not as much there. It's kind of just, I like to wear many hats, mostly being as closely involved with customers as possible, both from the open source side and also from Splunk customer side, and also just contribute when I can. And yeah.
You've done a keynote, what was it called? My Life as a Chameleon?
Yes.
I think that also kind of sums up what you just described as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Not traditional.
I hear that. We tend to be that way at RedMonk as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So there are a lot of people out there who have been to many KubeCon CloudNativeCons. I've been to a few. There are some folks who haven't been there at all. Can you tell us a little bit about the event itself and what people can expect to attend or expect when they attend, especially now that it's all virtual?
Yeah. So it's just a gathering of individuals who want to talk about various CNCF projects. Right? KubeCon, right, was I guess we would primarily focus on Kubernetes, but as the CNCF landscape got bigger and there's a lot more projects now, that's why CloudNativeCon is just as important in terms of the title. So I guess you can view it as two ways, and this doesn't as easily apply in the virtual world, but one is just learning from talks, attending and just seeing how other people think about some of the problems, and the second way is actually learning from the individuals themselves and kind of how we say hallway track. Mm-hmm. And so it's a great opportunity to just learn from others and collaborate, right? We've made the joke that we should have more whiteboards everywhere, just because you're probably gonna leave a talk and be like, hey, I have a question for you, let me draw out my architecture and let's debug these things. And it's always just a fun place to collaborate on projects and problems together, and also make friends, right? I guess you kind of accidentally become friends with the people because you're talking to them all the time, and then it's a good opportunity to meet them face to face. But I know that's different in the virtual world. And so at least within the virtual world, we know the hallway track isn't as easy to do. And so we are adding a lot more, virtual connection moments. There's the happy hour, there's bingo, I think there's still karaoke, there's all these ways there. So we can still connect with other individuals who like to attend these conferences and still make friends. It'll just be a little bit different at first, but you'll still be establishing that relationship for some point in the future when we get to meet again in person.
I had not been aware that karaoke was one of the kind of activities that were planned, and I'm actually excited now that I know that.
Yeah, because I know we did it for EU. I'm pretty sure we're doing it for North America.
I think you have to do it now.
I think so.
I think there's no choice.
That's a good point. Sorry, yeah. CNCF.
or you're welcome, CNCF, because who doesn't love karaoke? Right?
Yeah.
So moving on a little bit, so you are one of the two co-chairs for this event. Can you tell us a little bit about what are the roles and responsibilities of co-chairs? When does it start? What do you actually do during the event?
Yeah. So a lot of the work is before the event. So we're in charge of kind of I'm saying in charge loosely, in terms of adapting the conference to the community needs, right? The 101 track that came out at KubeCon EU and is once again in North America, right?
It was so good. It was such a good resource. Yeah. Everyone I've heard comment about it was people who didn't need it clearly didn't, use it, but for folks who showed up for the first time, it was a big hit.
Yeah, right. Like I think that's the thing. I guess like I've said this, like there's a term that I like to use, like operational bias. Is like if you've been at KubeCon enough times, or if you're just involved enough in a certain project, or even one or two projects, like you can navigate things around. Like okay, like you might not need one-on-one, but right as KubeCon grows over time, there are going to be so many new people every year. Like I can't. Priyanka mentioned this in the Twitch stream. But it's like there's so many, like hundreds of thousands, or like over 1 million new like CNCF, like kind of like project adopters in this year, like contributors. I can't remember, not contributors, but there's some word for it. But like that's how much the community has grown, and we can't leave them in the dust, right? And this is like the perfect opportunity to make sure that you as an attendee get to learn from others who are, who have experience, and even just make a little more sense of all the terms and some of the process. And so that's one example of like adapting to community needs. And so like that'll impact the CFPs, the call for proposals. Then after that, once all the CFPs have been submitted and there's initial review by the track chairs and the committee, so Stephen and I, or Vicky and I, back when we were co-chairs together, we would come up with a final schedule. And so try to make sure that we had a pretty well balanced set of topics for like each track, and then also like from advanced, some of our beginner to advanced, and trying to make sure, like, notice any trends. Like if we've heard, I can't even think of an example right now. If we've been hearing certain terminology that's been coming up quite a bit, like, hey, like this is starting to get really popular. Like we should make sure that we have something for that there. One of actually the best things about the role responsibility of co-chair is that we get to partner with the keynote speakers and make sure that they feel that they're successful for their presentation. And it's really fun just to get a sneak peek of all the content, but also get to have like dedicated time to like, hey, like, let's make sure you're successful. Like, let's talk through your presentation. And especially now, since we are virtual, like and I know that I'm very lucky. It's like, that gives me an opportunity to connect with people much at a deeper level than a broad audience. And then we do keynote presentations, and then after, on the day of, it's mostly just being around for questions. We MC the virtual, so like we'll do the introductions. And
that sounds like a lot of work for two people to do.
It is quite a bit of work, but like I will say that this is where like Nancy Lancaster is amazing in being like, she plays an integral role in this, and also just a CNCF team. Like it is very much, it's community, right? Like if we need resources and we need help, or even just debugging, like I'm going to say debugging things, not like actual debugging, but mentally debugging things, like there is a lot of support there, and so we all get it done together.
So last year I was at KubeCon CloudNativeCon in San Diego, and I saw Brian Lyles and Vicky Chung do an amazing job, kind of hosting, because they emceed the keynotes. And then of course, Vicky and you did, like, an expert job kind of co-chairing and also emceeing the first kind of virtual KubeCon CloudNativeCon back in August. And of course, you are back now with Stephen Augustus. When you sign up to co-chair, do you sign up for like multiple events, or is it set in stone? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so we usually sign up for 3 events. So originally, so I had signed up for EU, China, which turned into, I believe, it was Open Source Summit China this year, and then North America. And so that's usually what the normal form is, a little bit just due to like the virtual event, and also we decided to like at least extend mine for one more event. So I'll be doing KubeCon EU again next year. But it is very much known. And so what we try to do is we try to overlap with someone who has experience co-chairing and someone who doesn't, just so that way we can support each other. So yeah, it's usually 3 events. This year's a little bit special, just 2020.
Yeah, I think that's a good definition of 2020. And that makes so much sense too, to have someone who's kind of like a returning co-chair, and then someone who's new, and then nobody is like starting from scratch.
Yeah,
definitely do not want in 2020.
Yeah, you kind of underestimate how long it takes to come up with a schedule. And it's like, even when we know it's like, okay, we have 3 weeks to do it, it's like, unfortunately, we all are like, okay, it's due tomorrow. Let me finally start doing this. And to have someone, like to walk through and just talk about, sometimes like we'll have 2 talks that are could be very, similar or very really interesting, but different topics, and just like thinking about, having familiar with the last conference. Oh, we talked about this, or oh, we didn't highlight this. Let's highlight that now. And so a little bit of that context carrying over helps a lot.
Yeah, and you get some like continuity as well, which I think is something we don't often think about when you're planning like one event, but when it's like one in an event that happens again and again, it certainly makes sense.
Yeah.
So kind of shifting gears a little bit. So we've seen a lot of online conferences at this point because everything started moving online in spring, and I think folks have been learning from earlier conferences, and now you have the CNCF getting to do like yet another online event. In your mind, what are some of the kind of like pros and cons of moving into that like virtual space?
Yeah, I'll start with the pros.
Yay.
Definitely. Yeah. Reduced barrier of entry, right? It's no longer right geography, right? Being able to fly out, spend in a hotel, food, right? I think we sometimes forget how privileged we are to be able just to do that. And this really does expand, right? It gives an opportunity to anyone to be able to attend, right? Or even if you can afford to fly, say like you just have some commitments you can't leave, like at least now you can attend when something fits your schedule more. And I saw this at EU where like we had attendees from Africa and parts of Asia and just like so many, and like South America. It was like so awesome to see more of that representation instead of just, if we're North America, like people like, oh, I came from, like the city that's only a 2-hour flight, like just so much. It's just great to see more diversity in that aspect. Another thing, and this is actually that we've said before, is that going forward, there will always be a virtual component to the conferences. And this ended up being a forcing function for us to find new ways to interact, right? Like adding Slack live reactions. Like not everyone is comfortable asking a question, right? In a big auditorium, right? And so
not at all.
Right? It's terrifying. It's incredibly terrifying.
Even asking a question in Slack can be terrifying.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I fully agree with you on that one. So we definitely, maybe we need to find an even better way to like maybe add anonymous questions or, like remove your name, but at least that's taking a little bit more into account that people have different ways that they interact with communities. And so that is, I think that's really awesome. Right.
And I will say one thing I thought that worked really well at KubeCon CloudNativeCon EU was the kind of ever-present invitation for people to participate. Even if you were showing up and this is your first CNCF event like ever, like join the Slack, say something, introduce yourself, say why you're here. And to me, I've been to so many events and I felt so welcomed. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I think that actually it's a really good point. It's like we're definitely just ask a question Slack. And I know it's terrifying. Like I will admit, like sometimes I have to ask a question. It takes me 20 minutes to type up a 2-sentence question. And I keep on being like, oh, did I do enough research? Do I have enough links? But I think for anyone who's attended KubeCon or even who are a part of the projects, is like these communities are so welcoming and we love newbies. I'm going to say, sorry, newbies. So, anyone who hasn't had experience. And so like, please ask those questions because one, that usually addresses that, that highlights that we have a gap in our documentation, or there's something that we, my favorite term, operational bias, that I forget that you would know this because I've been doing this for however many years, and I need to make it more consumable for new people. I don't know. It's a wonderful community. More just please, everyone, ask questions. I know it's a little intimidating. Do like your nervous dance, and then just like press enter, and it'll go well. I promise. So yeah, I think that's the pros. I think the cons. I'll say personally for me, I imagine many people have this too. It's like, like the stress of creating a presentation, especially recording it. And one thing that I miss is just that human response. If like I make a bad joke, like I love making bad jokes, but hearing those those giggles, or just like acknowledging that it's a bad joke, that's just a human response when you're doing something. That has made it harder for me to necessarily enjoy giving conference talks, just because of that human aspect of it. But I will, I guess, like this end of turning to pros, like like by like having the happy hours that like Priyanka added at KubeCon EU and like a lot more of the formal structure, like I actually still did in the end get some like, good questions. And so it's just different and I have to just adapt to it.
I like that, turning a con into a pro. But I feel like that's what a KubeCon CloudNativeCon co-chair, program co-chair does when called upon to do so.
Thank you. And I think like probably the biggest con is that sometimes it's hard to dedicate full time to it. Because if you're like, hey, I'm at home, like, oh, I can just watch this while I'm doing work. And so that sometimes it makes it harder to actually focus on, the conference. We do actually have a template letter in, if you look at KubeCon North, the website, it's like, I think it's kind of like, dear boss, like, I really want to attend this conference. This is really great. Like helping you provide, like some form of documentation to your boss manager saying like, hey, I would like dedicate time off so I could focus on this. Yeah.
And the fact that you're aware of that's something that people have to go through, I think is also a big plus. Right?
Yeah,
breaking down the accessibility to actually attend, right?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I think that's it for now.
I think that was a really good list. So you do a whole bunch of work before the conference even starts. Clearly, you shoot promos and things like that, which we'll put a link to that, yes. in the transcript, because the promo that you and Stephen did, I thought was so great. I've never quite seen anything like that for a tech conference, and things. And you should be a new standard.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, that video still makes me crack up. It's so funny. It's so bad at the same time. It's lovely.
It's awesomely bad. I think there's an entire series about things that are being like awesomely bad. But I thought it was awesomely awesome. If that helps at all. But once the conference actually starts, do you get to attend any of the sessions? Do you get to do any of the kind of day zero events, such as the Open Telemetry Community Day? Like, what do you actually get to do the week of?
Yeah. So after we're done our keynote responsibilities, we're really free to do whatever we want. So we can attend talks, we can join in the events, even day zero. I tend to have very limited capacity for how much Zoom and video time I can handle. So I actually set quite a bit of time aside for self-care. I, attend the talks, some of the talks that I really want to. So I do a bit of that research beforehand, attend the keynotes, and then I actually disconnect. I need that time for myself, because otherwise I can't process information and it just drains me a lot. And so it's also maybe a little bit of a reminder for everyone's like, even though it's technically in your home, right, your makeshift office, couch, it's still exhausting. It still requires a lot of energy. So definitely remember just to like respect what your boundaries and your limits are for participating, and you don't need to do it all.
I think that's such good advice. And I know that at KubeCon CloudNativeCon EU back in August, one of the things I really appreciated was that even though we couldn't have a puppy pen, we did have like puppy cams and kitty cams and all these other things that were encouraging people to get away from their desks or do desk yoga or things like that. And I really love that you and Vicky also managed to get your dogs into the keynote emceeing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, my dog is in the other room because he's annoyed with me at the moment.
That is how my cats work as well. Otherwise, I'd have a cat on screen for you to help demonstrate the awesomeness of having pets on Zoom filming. Okay, so moving on from the kind of importance of self-care and pacing yourself, and make sure you're not trying to make yourself be glued to your computer for all the hours of KubeCon CloudNativeCon. So you and Stephen and the CNCF General Manager Priyanka Sharma have already spoken about on the kind of new CNCF Twitch stream about the things that you're like looking forward to, for this upcoming like KubeCon. So we'll link to that as well, so you don't have to rehash everything there. But anything to add, or any last minute things that you want folks to know about this event, especially people who are on the fence about attending? They're like, I might go, I might not. Like, what is that? The one last thing that you would tell them to convince them to go?
Yeah. So this kind of comes back to the keynotes that like I got to partner, like, just be a resource for the presenters. And one thing I'm seeing is that this is starting to be really the KubeCon about end users and integrations. And so there's definitely been jokes, it's not even jokes, right? There is an element of truth to it that, adopting some of these projects it's hard, right? It requires a lot of technical resources, expertise, and not everyone has that. And that's okay, right? That is totally okay. But now this is starting to actually be the part where projects are being a lot more cognizant of that barrier of entry. And so they're making, integrations across different projects. So, I can't even think of an example right now, but I know they exist, right? It's like I integrate with other projects. So now you can do both of these things together, or there are easier ways to adopt these projects without requiring that, just building up that expertise. Mm-hmm. And so all to say that the projects are starting to mature where we're caring a lot more about it. Like, it's not that we haven't cared, it's more that we're broadening our scope of what end users are, who are the end users. And it's not only for experts anymore. And that's starting to change. And so if you're thinking about projects, this is a really good time to join, right? And, join the maintainer, other than the regular talks, like the maintainer track sessions and meet the maintainers is a really good spot to ask very pointed questions. Like, I want to do project X. What do you think about this? And so really
even more so than the last KubeCon, CloudNativeCon, which I thought was very welcoming to newbies. It sounds like this one will be even extra, have something for people who are there for the first time.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking time to speaking with us today. I know how busy you must be, especially right before KubeCon and CloudNativeCon, and good luck with the event.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.